and today we are going to talk about getting past the NCLEX. I know the NCLEX is a huge, scary thing for a lot of us, so the thing that you have to remember is that it does not have to be. It's really just a mindset that you have to get over, and I'm going to try to help do the best I can with that for you guys today. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Who am I? My name is Marlee, and I am the Master Nursing Scholar here at Picmonic. So that means that I help with the content here at Picmonic. I help to make sure everything is medically accurate. I help produce the vlogs on our YouTube channel, and really just kind of a bit of everything. Hello, there I am. Hi. Okay, so back to what we were talking about. So I am a nurse. I graduated nursing school, and then I took my NCLEX in October. So I am very familiar with the stress and the struggle of having to deal with all of that preparation that we all had to go through, and it is really, really scary, and it's a lot to take on. So the big important thing here is that you have to try not to make it into your worlds, because it can easily turn into everything you think about. It's all encompassing, and if you just take the proper steps and you prepare right, then it will be, I'm not going to say it's a breeze, but it'll be definitely easier than you think. So yeah, I went to nursing school in Edmonton in Canada. I'm Canadian, so I went there for nursing school. And I took my NCLEX in October, and after I graduated, I moved to Arizona and started working for Picmonic, and I took my NCLEX here in Arizona, and it took me, well, we'll get into all that, but my first degree was in broadcast journalism, so I was never a science brain kind of person. I was always in the creative field thinking visually. So that's what drew me into Picmonic, is it's for visual learners. And I had a really hard time during nursing school when I first started. It was a big struggle for me to learn memorization techniques, and nothing was sticking, and I don't learn that way. I don't read a textbook and magically absorb the knowledge. So Picmonic was so helpful for me because it connected all the dots for me. It helped me make sense of everything. So we'll go over a little bit of that today too. So what is Picmonic? We use fun pictures and stories and images to help you remember everything that you need to know in nursing school, and we narrow it down to the most high yields, important information using all these fun pictures and facts and stories, so it really will stick into your head long term. So especially for me, when I first started, I was a big crammer. I would put off studying, and then I would stay up all night, and I would cram and cram and cram. And I know a lot of you are probably like this too, where you just sit there and you cram, and then you walk out of the exam as soon as the exam is done, and you cannot remember anything, right? Like a day goes by, and you're like, I don't remember anything. So the good thing about Picmonic, though, is that because of all these fun images and stories, you start thinking in Picmonic language. You start thinking of hypoglycemia as a hippo with a glue bottle, or warfarin. Sorry, see, even I do it now. The warfarin as a warfarin, and then penicillin as the pencil villain. You start thinking this way, and it really connects everything and lets you just remember things long term. So I'll show you. We do have over 800 topics for nursing, and we cover fundamentals, we cover OB, psych, peds, really everything you can think of in your nursing world, we cover it. So we will get started with what we are covering today. So today, talking about the NCLEX, we're going to start talking about beginning the journey, building good study habits, using time management, and how to use Picmonic. Try to see where you need help, understanding where you need help, and then we're going to talk about taking on the monster, I like to call it, taking on the monster by having the NCLEX checklist for you to prepare yourself for what's going to come. We're going to talk about proper nutrition for the beginning of the test, avoiding and managing test-taking anxiety, what to expect during the test, and then the aftermath, what to expect after that. And then we're going to wrap up with a Q&A session. So, beginning the journey. Oh, and I just want to start by saying everyone is different, right? So I'm just going to let you know my experience and what helped me. It might not help you. We might go about it a different way, but this is my personal experience, and people who I went to school with, we kind of all shared the same kind of ideas and processes. But what you're going to do is you're going to want to pick a date and preferably have that date 4 to 6 weeks out. And this was a struggle for me. So what I did was I graduated and I was like, oh my God, okay, that was just the most stressful thing. I'm going to give myself like 3 weeks just to relax, right? I'm just going to relax for a while. And then I'm going to start studying. So then that 3 weeks came and went really fast. And then it was like, okay, I'm gonna start studying now. So I'm gonna set my date for 6 weeks from now. I'm gonna give myself enough time. Then I kind of procrastinated and didn't really start studying. So I just kept pushing my date off over and over and over again. And then I started to get really panicky. So I kept pushing it even more out because I just didn't feel prepared. So what I should have done from the beginning is picked a date and stuck to it. It was a big mistake on my part because the more I pushed it out, the more terrified I became. And then, things aren't fresh in your mind anymore. And you kind of get into this mindset of like, I can just keep going. I can just keep pushing it out. It's not the way to think about this. Pick a date, stick to it, and just get it done. No procrastinating. It's not good for anyone. So don't delay. That's some good advice I have for you there. The other thing is to find a study buddy. And I know a lot of people don't like studying with other people. I had my good friend was in all my clinicals randomly, and we worked really well together, and we studied really, really well together. And it was very helpful to study with a person because for me, it was nice to be able to talk through things and kind of teach each when you start teaching each other, you yourself are learning and you're repeating information back to yourself, so you're kind of constantly in that learning and training mode, so things stick. And a lot of times too, since we were in the same clinical group, if we were going over a NCLEX prep book and we would disagree on an answer, and her name was Bruna. So Bruna would always say, like, no, Marlee, remember I had that patient and this is what happened. And then I would connect the dots and be like, oh, yeah, I do remember that patient and when that did happen. So it was kind of nice to hear her experiences and tell her mine. And we were in it together, so we both kind of could relate. So if you don't work with someone, if you like to study by yourself, that's great too. It just depends on who you are and how you like to study. Now going over question banks and prep books. So, ooh, shoot. Sorry guys. Hang on just a second. Okay, there we are. So question banks. You need to get a question bank. You do. And we'll go over how many questions you should be doing and everything. Everyone has a preference on their question banks. I used a couple different ones. I used Kaplan. I used NCLEX Mastery, the app on my phone. I also went to the NCSBN site and used some of those questions, and I did use Saunders NCLEX RN exam, that purple book. I was trying to, I heard a lot of different advice from everyone, and I should have just stuck to what I felt was right. So follow your gut on this one. You don't need a million different question banks. I found they were all pretty much the same to me. But if you have one that you really like, stick to that, keep going with that. I did really like the Saunders NCLEX RN exam book. Um, I like flipping through books, but I did also really like NCLEX Mastery, the app, because I could take it on the go, and when I was, like in the waiting room at the doctor's office, I could just go through questions. The important thing here is that you read the rationales. Make sure you read the rationales. These are going to help you so much. So don't just answer the question, and if you get it wrong, move on. And even when you get it right, don't move on. Make sure you take the time to really understand the rationales and why you got it right and why you got it wrong, and they'll stick with you and it'll help you moving forward. We also provide a question of the day. Picmonic provides a question of the day that the scholars here, our scholar team, works really hard to make sure that we provide you guys with relevant, accurate questions that are NCLEX formatted, and they're fun, and we give you one every single day. So be sure to check that one out too. And we have a study plan, which I will talk about later, and this is great too because we made this so that you can divide your time wisely, and we'll talk about that in a bit too. So moving on, how to start building good study habits. So this one was really hard for me. Like I was talking about in the beginning of nursing school, I was not a studier. I never really had to study because my prior degree was more project based, so I never really built good study habits. And so I found that my first semester was a really big struggle. My grades were not good, and I would cram the night before. I would stay up all night. I would drink a lot of coffee, and then I would go into the exam and be half dead and just kind of stare. My exams were computerized. I remember just like staring at the screen and just like things blurring and just like, what did I do? And and then I'd walk out of the exam not thinking I did very well and knowing that if I had built better study habits, then I would have been, I would have done better. So I had to start learning how to do that. And what I did was I started to set a schedule, and this is more for NCLEX. I had to start treating it like it was my job. Like I put everything on the back burner, and studying for NCLEX was my job. And you have to treat it like that because otherwise you don't have this sense of urgency. Um, you you can procrastinate, which is what I did for the first couple months, and it puts accountability on you, especially if you don't feel the pressure. If you schedule it a couple months out and you don't feel that pressure, you need to treat it like it's your job, and you also need to know yourself. So I used to think I was a night owl, and I don't know why I thought that because I would kind of fade at night and think like if I just stay up late and study, I'll get the most out of it. But I realized that I am so clear-headed in the morning, and so I transitioned into waking up really early because I was clear-headed, I could focus, and it was for the first like I'd wake up at like 7 and know that I had from 7 to 10 to be really, really focused. And I knew that was when I was going to get my good studying. And so for me, that worked. If you are a night owl, or if you're super focused at night, then do that. Just know yourself. When are you most productive? And make sure you incorporate that into your study routine. And then you're going to want to find a location that suits your study needs. So for me, I do well in a setting that has a lot of natural light. I need a lot of windows. I need to feel like I'm not cooped up in a tiny cave. I don't want to feel like I've been like living in a cave for the past 5 years and that I come out and see the light and I can't see anything. I need sunglasses. I need some light. And I also really like studying in coffee shops, so where people are around and I kind of see movement. But a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people need like a library setting. They need to be secluded in a room. So know yourself in that way too. Find a location that is going to suit your needs, where you're going to be the most productive. Moving on, we are going to talk about more, building study habits. So, um, habits in general, building good habits, you're going to want to start small and then work your way up. So this is true with anything. Um, I'll give you a funny example, and this is so silly, and I realize that, but I was just talking to everyone about this. I am a terrible flosser. I don't floss my teeth nearly as much as I should. So this year I was like, I'm going to start the habit of flossing my teeth. I don't know why I can't stand it. I hate it. So it's like, instead of just saying I'm going to do it every single day and 3 times a day, I'm going to start small. I'm going to do it once a day. I'm going to just do the bottom teeth, right? And I know this is, I sound ridiculous. I realize this. But so I start small. I tell myself I'm going to do something small. And then by the time I'm flossing my bottom teeth, am I really going to be lame and say, like, okay, that's enough? You know, like, no, I'm going to do my whole mouth. So you just got to tell yourself one little thing and then it'll move. You'll get there. You know, the same thing with running. So I'm a runner. I don't know if how many of you are runners, but when you're getting back into running shape, it's hard to kind of think of this like, well, I have like so many miles I have to do, and you start to get overwhelmed with this whole huge goal. So instead of thinking it of like this big thing that is kind of overwhelming, you have to think of it in small steps. Say, like, tell yourself that you're only going to go out, you only have to go out for 10 minutes a day, and you just got to get out there and go. And as soon as you're out there, you can turn back around if you don't want to do it anymore, right? So that'll get you going. And when I do that and I go out for 10 minutes, chances are I'm going to want to go out for longer. So it's just getting that small start to to getting motivated, and then you'll end up probably doing more. But if you don't, you told yourself you were only going to do 10 minutes and that's all you had to do. So this is a good way to start building good habits. And the same goes for studying. So if you don't feel like studying, or if you're feeling like you're very overwhelmed with the amount of studying you have to do, especially for the NCLEX, when you see how much you have to review, don't think of it as this huge thing and get anxious and get freaked out by it. Just tell yourself, okay, today I'm going to start with an hour, especially if you're just starting out. I'm going to start with an hour of studying, and I'm just going to go over fundamentals today. That's all. Don't look at anything else, just an hour of fundamentals. And then you'll see that as you're building those study habits, it becomes easier and easier. Um, so also be realistic with your time. And this is one that I also had a lot of issues with. Um, I would, you know, on a day I was like, I'm not studying today. Tomorrow I am going to study for 9 hours. Realistically, does anyone sit down for 9 hours and study? No, you're not going to sit down for 9 hours and study. So be realistic with your time, and know that you're probably going to get a solid 3 hours, 2 hours, whatever, but you're not going to sit there for 9 hours. And just know that. Be realistic. Um, and this is also what's great about our study plan, is that the longest day, I believe, is just under 4 hours. So we're realistic with that, and we know that you're busy. We know that you lose focus really fast. So we know that, keeping that in mind, we're gonna help you study, and we have a 30-day study plan that is gonna get you there without having to feel like this overwhelming, crazy, anxious, like you're gonna just like need a million hours a day. No, we keep it realistic. Um, okay, talking about study breaks, these are important to keep small. So what I would do is, when I was ready for a study break, I would set my alarm on my phone and keep it to 20 minutes, 25 max, but nothing more than that, because it is easy to start procrastinating and get distracted. And like, what if you're planning on eating a snack on your study break as a reward, which is a good idea, but keep it as a snack instead of, okay, well, I'm really hungry, so now I'm going to make a 4-course meal, and oh my gosh, 3 hours went by, and oh my gosh, I've been wanting to watch this episode of whatever on Netflix, so I'm just going to watch one episode, and then that turns into a whole binge fest of Netflix episodes. Like, it's so easy to do that if you don't set your alarm and make sure that you are holding yourself accountable for keeping those study breaks small, 20, 25 minutes max. Um, let's see here. I know I have some questions, which sorry, I'm just looking at them. Okay. Um, what other resources would I recommend to help you do well? Mary says. Um, so we got the question banks going. Um, we have Picmonic, and we'll talk a little bit about how Picmonic is going to help you prepare for the NCLEX. Other resources. There are review courses that you can take. I didn't feel like I needed them, but I feel like a lot of people do benefit from them in the way that if you're new to NCLEX style questions and you don't know how to answer them, they're a good way to kind of go over um, training your brain into learning how to answer them because they're very, very different than normal nursing exams and the questions that are there. And it did take me a long time to train my brain into learning how to answer NCLEX style questions. So if you're having an issue with that, I would recommend taking the courses like a Hurst course or a Kaplan course. Um, that Saunders book does also talk about how to approach the questions, and we'll talk a little bit about it today. But it's definitely a different thing that you'll be used to. But once you start doing the practice questions over and over, your brain starts really understanding and your brain starts getting trained to picking out those keywords and seeing what what the question is really asking you. And they're so tricky, you guys. They are so tricky, but you'll be able to get past it. Okay, I have another question. Sorry. Okay, well, I'll get to some of these after. Um, let's see. Okay, so we talked about study breaks. We're moving on. Practice questions. How many per day? So, the biggest thing here is to train your brain, like we were talking about, to getting used to the NCLEX style questions, and practice is everything. Practice is everything. Think about anything you do. Like when you start getting really good at a skill or really good at something you want to learn, it takes practice. It takes so many hours of practice. So think of it that same thing in as NCLEX style questions and training your brain to do that. And how do you do that? You're just going to keep answering questions. So for me, when I really buckled down and I really was ready to do 30 days, because I said I'm going to take this in 30 days. So I would do between 50 to 100 questions per day. And I had a goal of doing, I think, 2,000 questions by the end of the 30 days. So that was for me something that I needed to set aside time to do. So like I was telling you in the morning, that was my time to study and really get going on that. And it was also really important for me because I told you I was a procrastinator, right? So I had to get over that. And so if I had like something else to do, like I'm a runner, so I would make sure to go on my run before I did any of that. So I had no excuses to not do it, right? So I would go and I would run and then I'd sit down and I would study and make sure that I had nothing to distract me and nothing in my way. I had to do those 50 questions. I had to do those 75 questions, whatever it was. And then I would also, if I had time, like I was saying, at the doctor's office or standing in line at the grocery store, this is when the NCLEX Mastery app came in, when I could take it on the go and really just go through questions, go through questions, go through questions, and just constantly keep my brain in that training mode because that is so important just to have it on the surface of your mind. And that way you start to feel more confident and you start to really get used to the style of the questions. So you get these practice quizzes if you get a question bank, and it's really easy to get frustrated or feel like you're not doing well if you get a bad score on these practice quizzes. And don't let that happen to you. It's really, this whole thing, you guys, is a mind game. You just have to kind of keep going, keep going, keep going, because it's so easy to get just so discouraged. And you just have to know that you're it's a journey. You got to keep going, you know? So keep going with those practice questions. Okay, so I know this happens to all of us too. If you're just not feeling it one day, you're staring at a page, you're staring at the questions, and nothing is connecting, nothing's making sense. And you're just not feeling it. Your brain, like, sometimes when you have like a lot of reading to do and you're just staring at the page and you've read the same paragraph like 6 times and it's just not sticking, you gotta sometimes just give in and know that it's not happening today, and you're wasting energy and you're wasting time on trying to absorb information that just isn't getting absorbed. So what I would do in these situations is I would go and have some fun and hang out with my family or friends and go see a movie, go relax, but don't let yourself feel guilty about it, because the worst feeling is when you go and you have fun and you're just, instead of really being present and really having fun, you're just super guilty that you're not studying. So don't let that happen. Just tell yourself, okay, I'm going to give myself this day to just relax. I'm going to get back at it tomorrow, but today I'm going to relax and I'm not going to feel guilty about it. Those are really important. You need to give yourself a break every now and then, because you'll burn out. It's easy to burn out. So make sure that you have a little bit of a life, because you didn't sign up to have no life, you didn't. So let yourself have one of those days, but make sure you get back at it tomorrow. And you'll find that if you give yourself one of those days, you'll feel so refreshed and you'll be ready to rock it again. So give yourself one of those days and don't feel guilty about it. That is my main message. Okay, using Picmonic. This one is our hypoglycemia assessment, and this one I love so much because this is the Picmonic that I remember when I was having, on my last semester of nursing school, I had a Med-Surg exam, and I was using Picmonic. And this is the Picmonic. I had like a select all that apply question, and it was something like, which of the following assessment findings are indicative of something about it was assessment findings like which symptoms are indicative of hypoglycemia, something like that. And this is the first time that Picmonic actually I started seeing the magic of it, and it was so exciting because I built this whole image that you're seeing on the screen. I built this in my head, and I saw the hippo with the glue bottle and the trimmer for tremors, and then I saw seizure for seizures, and I saw the leather jacket for lethargy. I saw Confucius for confusion. This was so exciting for me because I built this entire image in my head, and it was so easy at this point to just recall the information so fast. So that's the magic of Picmonic, is that you start building these images in your head, and it's like I'm so excited about it. It's like life-changing once you realize that you don't have to stress so much. So that's our hypoglycemia assessment. Um, Another one here that I really like to talk about is our warfarin and heparin Picmonics, because how many of you actually get warfarin and heparin mixed up? I used to get them mixed up all the time. It was such a struggle, and I didn't know how to tell them apart when I really needed to recall the information on an exam. But using Picmonic, this is where the magic comes in. So we have our warfarin Picmonic here, and you see that this whole scene, so the warfarin, the war fairy, as we call her, is in this international incident, and it's this whole story. So what you would do is you'd go through the Picmonic, audio would play in the educational mode. So we take all the high-yield facts here on the left, and the image cuts off a bit, but you can kind of get the point here. So it reads to you as your textbook would, and gives you all the high yield facts that you need to know about this medication or this specific topic, and introduces the characters to you. And then once you go into story mode right here, see where my mouse is, that's where it cements all the information by coming up with this, by telling you this crazy story about how the war fairy is in this international incident, and the Viking King with his fresh frozen plasma TV is ousted from the international building, and it's great because then you start to remember. Because my issue was like, oh, which one do I have to remember with warfarin? Is it INR? Is it APTT? But if you remember, or if you see here, the international building is for INR. So then you connect that dot. You start building this image in your brain, and you're thinking like, oh my God, I can't remember which one is safe for pregnancy. I just cannot recall. But then you remember, you start building the image in your brain again, and here you see this pregnant woman with caution tape. So it's so easy once you start thinking this way and building this image, and it's so much less stressful. So to contrast that with heparin, we have the hippie heron, and he has his peace pipe right here, and right here we have what is it measuring? PTT, um, and what's the antidote here is protamine sulfate. So we have a potato man with a with the sulfur match right over here. So it's really easy to just kind of contrast these now because you build two totally different images in your brain. So it's almost harder now to get them mixed up. Ooh, look at him. Okay, so where do you need help? This is important going back to NCLEX studying to realize where you need help. Are you having trouble answering the questions because you have a knowledge deficit? You just don't know the content there? Are you having issues because you don't know how to answer the questions because they're NCLEX style and they're tricky, right? They try to trick us. Or are you having issues because you have test taking anxiety? And for me, it was all three. So it's okay if you have trouble with any of these. But we'll talk about a little bit about each of these. Okay, we'll go into a question too. I'm not gonna talk too much about the questions because I feel like we can do a whole nother webinar on this. This is more like NCLEX prep, getting your mind into it, but we'll do a question here. So while doing a morning medication administration, the nurse notes that a 70-year-old male patient has a heart rate of 45. Which of the following medications should be withheld? So number 1 is hydrochlorothiazide, number 2 is Pindolol, number 3 is lisinopril, number 4 is furosemide. Does anyone know the answer? He has a heart rate of 45. Okay, so I can't really see if any of you are answering, but I'm assuming somebody called out something. The answer is Pindolol. So what? How can we oh, Andrea says A. Okay. Nope. Close though. I mean, they're they're all tricky. But to use Picmonic and to help you answer this question, you would remember the beta fish on the blocks with the OLOL. Why? Because beta blockers end in OLOL, and we have the beta fish on the block, and the Picmonic would show you that a side effect of beta blockers is decreased heart rate. So you would build this whole image in your head, and going back to the question, we're looking at, the 45, 48. It's a low heart rate. So as a low heart rate, what medication do we want to withhold because it's going to make the heart rate even lower, right? So Pindolol right here is going to be the answer. Decreased heart rate. You see the down arrow with the heart. And you would build that image in your mind with Picmonic. Woo. There it is. Okay, so mastering questions. Read the entire question, and then you're going to pause and you're going to ask yourself, which part of the nursing process is it asking me? And you're going to do this by identifying keywords. And here is where ADPI, do you guys remember ADPI? I know it was fundamentals, but ADPI is your best friend in these situations. NCLEX uses a ton of questions that you're going to need to remember ADPI. And ADPI, if you don't recall, is assessment, diagnosis, planning, implementation, and evaluation. So this is going to be your best friend. I can't even stress it enough because I remember we kind of talked about ADPI in the beginning of nursing school, and then it was just kind of left. Like, it was just like, oh, okay, yeah, like, whatever. And then it came back, like, full force. And I had no, I was like, I don't even remember this, but it came up. It's such a big part of the NCLEX questions. So you really, really need to understand what the question is asking you as far as the nursing process. So ADPI is the nursing process. And you'll get questions like, uh, let's see if that other one had one. No, I don't think it did. So you'll get a question like, um, which, the nurse is, um, I'm trying to think of one at the top of my head. The nurse is doing vitals on a patient, on a 45-year-old patient, and here are the specific vitals. What intervention does the nurse, which of the following interventions is should the nurse most likely do? Or I mean, that's a terrible NCLEX question, but the keyword there would be intervention. Okay, so if you're looking at a question and it says intervention, you know that the answer is not going to be an assessment answer. It's going to be an action item. Interventions are always action items, right? So same goes for if it's an assessment question. The answer isn't going to be an answer item. Does that make sense? I should have pulled up a question here, and I'll do that for our next webinar. We'll go over just some questions, but just know that ADPI is your very best friend in these situations, okay? Does anyone have a question on ADPI or what that really means? Because I know if you're getting ready to take the NCLEX, ADPI was a really long time ago, but if anyone has any questions on that, we'll revisit it later. So also, NCLEX, a lot of NCLEX questions are on prioritization. So that means which patient is the nurse going to see first? There's a lot of questions like that. And you're going to want to look at the acuity of each of these patients in these scenarios that they give you. And always remember your ABCs. ABCs, ADPI, and Maslow's hierarchy of needs are huge here, okay? So ABCs are airway, breathing, circulation, and those are very, very important. Airway, breathing, circulation, and then Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Sorry. So, is the patient going to be out of breath in the next couple of minutes? Is the patient starving? Is the patient just sad and lonely? You're going to prioritize these patients and see who needs to be seen first, and then going through ADPI, going through the nursing process. There's our Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Picmonic. It's a fun little one. Okay, day before the exam. Getting back to the exam. You're stressing out at this point. You're like, my exam's tomorrow. The point here is to eliminate stress, as much stress as possible, because it is so stressful, and you do not want to be stressed on the day of the exam any more than you have to be. You're already really stressed. So you want to be able to eliminate as much stress as possible. And how do you do that? The first thing I would do is map out the route to the testing center. And here you're also going to make sure that you have the right testing center and that it's at the right time and the right day, because in all the kerfuffle of everything, it is really easy to mix things up and register and it's been a month and you haven't looked back at that notice that you got that email confirmation. So double check here that it's the right testing center and it's the right time and the right day. And then map out the route to the testing center. So mine, I don't really think about these things in advance, and I remember being like, okay, I should map it out, it's tomorrow morning. And my exam center was like 45 minutes away. So can you imagine if I get ready to go and I'm driving and it's 45 minutes away, and like the stress of that, and then to tie in getting lost during all that, because I get lost a lot, So no, don't let that happen. Map out the route, make sure you know how long it's going to take for you to get there, and that'll eliminate so much stress in the beginning. Get gas in your car. And I know that sounds like a silly one, but it's really not. Just make sure that you have enough gas to get there, and that you're not going to be freaking out that you're lost and you can't get gas. And last thing you want to be thinking about is any of that stuff. You're going to want to lay out the documents you need for the test. And this is what you're going to need. You need two two identification pieces. So your passport and your driver's license. You can use a military identification card if you have that. What were the other ones? There were, um, I'll find those for you. Um, so yeah, make sure those documents are laid out. You don't want to forget any of those. You do not want to forget any of those. The other thing I would do is lay out your clothes, because if you can just have everything planned out, you don't have to think about things. So lay out your clothes. Make sure they're comfortable. You're going to be in there for a couple hours. Make sure you are very comfortable. No jewelry, because you're going to have to take that off and you're going to have to lock it up anyway. So don't wear any jewelry. Um, you're also going to have to lock up hats, scarves, and gloves. So don't, I mean, if you need to, if you need to wear a hat or a scarf, just know that you're going to have to be taking that off. The other interesting thing that I had during my exam, I was wearing a big sweatshirt, and I had those keyhole thing. You guys have seen those where you put your thumb through like the hole, and you kind of have like weird glove thing. It's not, I don't know how to explain it. It's like, your thumb's just like sticking out of a hole. And I was wearing that, not thinking anything of it. And when I went into the exam, they told me I couldn't have that. I had to roll up my sleeves because it's like a security thing. So make sure, just kind of be aware of these things, like I had no idea and I wouldn't even think about that, but it's definitely something you should be aware of. Set an alarm if your exam is in the morning. You want to make sure that you are not going to sleep in. So set a couple alarms. You're anxious. I'm sure you're going to be up anyway, but just make sure that you do not sleep in, because the last thing, if you are late, is you're not going to want to have to re-register and pay another exam fee. So make sure you are on time and that it is kind of a smooth morning and that you're not stressed out. Okay, so also for studying, I know a lot of people have questions about if you should be studying the day before. And this is all depending on your style of studying and you and how you learn and study and retain information and how you feel comfortable. It's all individual. Because for me, I had to study. I need to keep my brain in that concentrating mode, and I found that when I was doing questions, I kind of needed like an hour to warm up my brain and get back into it, and then I would get into a flow. So taking too much time off for me is not a good idea, because I just needed to constantly be thinking and NCLEX questions. But if you're someone who feels like you need to have a break and just totally, zone out before an exam, and you know that about yourself, then go with that. For me, that wasn't the case, but a lot of people feel that they need to have that separation, and that's totally great. I also did write out some review notes the night before the exam, and these were just very, very basic review notes. So I would write out lab values and just kind of go through those. I would write out vitals. I would write out drug endings, just stuff that was very basic, and just so I could kind of, go over all that stuff, and not so much questions, just lab values, vitals, like standard numbers. And then also get some sleep. We all know that we need solid sleep to do well on exams. So definitely try to relax as much as you can. I know that's like such a silly thing to say, like relax before your test, but try to relax. Do whatever you need to do. If you need to do some yoga or you need to take a bath or whatever, just definitely get some rest, relax, calm yourself down as much as possible. So the day of the exam, you're going to want to eat a proper meal. Do not skip breakfast. Absolutely do not skip breakfast or whatever meal it is. You're going to want to eat something light, but that will keep you full, especially if you get test taking anxiety and you kind of get queasy, and I would keep it light, but something that is going to keep you satisfied, and nothing with a lot of sugar. You don't want to have a sugar crash in the middle of the exam. That's such a terrible thing to have. So eggs and toast, or I like smoothies a lot. So I made a smoothie, and it keeps me full and it keeps me energized, and it's natural sugars, and it's not this like crazy sugar crash. I'm not having like pancakes and syrup and like a Coke or something. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just make sure that it's something that's going to keep you full and not too heavy, and you don't want to be thinking about your stomach at that point. Um, I got another question. Danetta, I think. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. If I've been out of school for 3 years, would it still be easy for me to take the test? Um, 3 years. So I think you're going to have to do a lot of studying, and you're going to have to do um, a lot of review. But I don't think that it's impossible. I think you can do it. Um, I think you could really, like the rest of us, just study really hard and get your brain into that nursing brain and really focus. And I think you can do it. I mean, you might have to take some review courses and just get familiar again with the whole nursing world, but I don't see why not. I think you can definitely give it a go, you know? So, yeah, anyway, arrive 30 minutes early to the exam because, like I said, if you're late, you're going to have to reschedule and you're going to have to pay again. And that's a lot of money. You don't want to have to pay again. And you don't have to reschedule because you've already built up this whole thing in your brain. And oh my God, what a stressful thing that would be. So don't let that happen to you just because you don't have, because you're running late. So make sure you arrive 30 minutes early. Don't worry about bringing supplies because they will be provided. So everything gets locked up, like I said, and they give you when you walk and you get an erasable board and a marker, and that's what you're going to take your notes on. And then a calculator is provided on the screen. So don't worry about that either. You go in empty-handed, everything is provided for you. Oh, I didn't even talk about caffeine. Okay, caffeine. And if you're like a crazy coffee drinker like I am, I know you're probably rolling your eyes at me right now because I would be rolling my eyes at me, but it is crazy how much a difference caffeine makes when you have anxiety about a test or anything. But the jitteriness, the ability to focus, everything is affected. So if you can, avoid it. If you can't, because I definitely can't, I need 1 cup at least. So I would limit it. So I would stick to 1 cup. Um, Nothing more than that if you can, maybe 2, but nothing more than that. Do not let yourself get into that anxious mode just because of a cup of coffee. And just tell yourself after the exam you can have a cup of coffee, you know. It's not that big of a deal. But do limit it if you can. Okay, so be prepared that when you get there, your picture will be taken and you'll provide a palm scan and a signature. So this is what your palm scan um, is what you use to sign in and sign out and check in and check out. And if you're taking breaks, they use your palm scan. So that's something that you have to kind of be prepared for. It's a little weird, you know, it's a little like bizarre, but that's how you check in and check out. And there are scheduled breaks during the exam, and my advice is to definitely take them, 100% take them, because if you get to the point, they're at a scheduled points. So at that point, you probably want to get up and walk around and refresh your brain anyway. But do remember that you have up to 6 hours for the exam, but the breaks count towards that. So just kind of keep that in mind in your own timing. I know you have a lot to focus on at that point, but just keep it in mind. You know, it's something just to be aware of. Okay, test taking anxiety. Do a lot of you guys get test taking anxiety? Because I get such bad test taking anxiety. It is the worst. And it's funny because I don't think I was really fully aware of it. And once I was aware of it, it's like it was out of the bag, you know, like oh my God, once you're aware of it, then you start getting panicky about getting it, right? So there are ways to kind of tricks to combat it a little bit. The number one thing is preparation. So, like, think about when you're feeling really confident about something, and when you're like, I got this in the bag, I know my material. It's the anxiety is kind of at a minimum because you know that you're going to do well. You know that you know the information. So making sure you're prepared, feeling confident about it is definitely key. Another thing is taking things one step at a time and not to rush. So what happens with me when I get test taking anxiety is I'll sit in there and I start rushing and I start not paying attention. I lose focus. I completely just you know. So what I have to do is I have to take it one step at a time. I have to focus on the question like it's my last question and really put all my energy into that and really read the question and just don't rush through anything and kind of calm yourself down. Again, avoid too much caffeine. It's just going to make things worse. I promise you, it's just not worth it. And then take those breaks. Those breaks are a lifesaver. Like if there's a way to check yourself and like get up, move around and be like give yourself a little pep talk. It's the breaks are great. I took a break. It honestly what turned me from going into this scary downward spiral of like I'm feeling into like no, I can do this. I got this. Take the break. It resets your mind. There's also breathing exercises you can do, which are really helpful. So if you just take a deep breath and hold it at the top for 4 seconds and then let it out for 3 seconds, that's so helpful. You immediately calm down. So think about breathing during the exam. And that's okay if you sound like a freak while you're like, people, who cares? Just take those like huge deep breaths and then hold it and then let it out and you'll calm down right away. Another thing I do is pop some gum into my mouth right before the exam. So I'll do something like spearmint or cinnamon. It really like it keeps you focused. It's so funny. I don't know why, but it just like your senses are all there. Everything focuses, but it's right before the exam. So just pop it in right before the exam. And then I always say this when everyone laughs at me, but when all else fails, think about your toes. So what I do is I start to get really panicky and then like people are leaving and you're like I'm taking forever and I'm just not you start getting into your head about it and then all of a sudden you think about your toes and you wiggle them and then you're just brought back right away. You just like you focus, you hyper focus. Like try it right now if I'm just blabbing and you're getting tired and bored, just think about your toes and all of a sudden you're back in it, right? It works. So try those tricks and maybe they'll help you. I hope they do because they definitely help me. Okay, so let's talk about getting to question 75 because the goal here, everyone hopes to get out at question 75 and when you get to question 76 you start panicking and that's what we want to avoid. So I would go into it thinking you're going to get all 275 or 265, whatever it is, questions, and really assume, like, just think that you're going to get them all because the worst feeling is thinking that as soon as you get to question 75 and then 76 and 77 and you start downward spiraling. That's when you start like hyperventilating and everything. So the key here is to avoid panicking and don't go on a downward spiral because once you start thinking that way and you start thinking negative thoughts and then it's really hard to pull yourself from that. So just let yourself know it's okay and it's just keep answering the questions like it's your last question. Don't lose focus. And I know that's really hard to do, but that's why these breaks are really helpful to give yourself a pep talk and then just like jump back on the horse, just don't let yourself get into that downward spiral. Okay, so the aftermath. So you took the test, it shut off at whatever many questions, and you're leaving the building and you're kind of numb because this is what happens. You become numb and you're like, I failed. Let me tell you something. I haven't talked to any nurse who thought they passed. So this is a completely normal feeling to come out and think you failed or not have any idea how you did. You have no idea. Everyone will tell you the same thing. It's just like, I have no idea. And then you like blur out the whole thing. It's so weird. You just like don't remember any of it. But don't freak out. Doesn't matter how many questions you got. You have no idea how you did. So do not freak out. And instead, what I would do is go celebrate because you just put so much time and energy into this huge like dragon that you had to slay. So just celebrate, like give yourself a breather. And it's been a long journey, so it doesn't matter how you did, just celebrate and deal with the aftermath after. And um, the biggest thing for me was having to distract myself because so if you look on the website, it normally takes 10 days. But if you are in certain states and they give you the list of states, you have the option to pay an extra $7.95 and get your, like, it's called fast results, and you get your results in 48 hours, and that's amazing. I mean, that's still a really long time to have to think about it, but it's still better than 10 days. I had to wait 10 days. It was awful. But even in those 2 days, if you have the fast results, you have to distract yourself at all costs. Like, you cannot think about it. You just got to keep distracting yourself. So what you have to do, in my opinion, is surround yourself by people who support you. So who are going to just constantly be supporting you and who love you and are just going to help you, make you feel really good, because you feel really weird after it. You're just like stressing, and you just want to be around people that are going to make you feel positive. And then do things that make you happy. Like if that means eating a bunch of cookies, like eat a bunch of cookies. If you want some wine, have some wine. If you want to go to a movie, if you want to go for a run, like do anything to distract yourself, and that's going to make you feel really good, because it is such an emotional roller coaster, and you just, it's hard. So just do things that are going to make you feel good. And then if you do fail, it's not the end of the world. Like it really isn't. No one died. You have a chance to take it again. It's definitely a punch in the stomach, I'm sure. Like I don't want to say it's not a huge deal, because it is. You did a lot of work to get there, and then to find out that you failed. But just know that you can take it again, and it's going to be okay, and you'll do better next time. And what happens if you do fail? Let's see. If you do fail, um, you'll receive an NCLEX, I think it's called the NCLEX Candidate Performance Report, or the CPR. I think that's what it's called. And it's a document to show how you did, like where your problem areas are, and what you need to prepare for the next exam, what to work on. So this is a really good thing that I would advise you to look at, and that way you can really see the areas that you need to work on to help you do better the next time. We'll do a little Q&A session right now, but if you have any more after this, you can definitely send us any questions at feedback@picmonic.com, and we'll happily answer any of those for you guys. So let me just look at the questions right now. It looks like we're going on time. Sorry, I'm just trying to grab them all. Okay, Marie asks how Picmonic will help us pass. So, I don't know if you saw the beginning, but when you have to recall information really fast for, the NCLEX or any exam, and you're having a hard time either telling the difference between two medications or assessments, the images start to build in your brain, and you start to really remember that information, because it's visual and it's fun and it's interesting, and you'll start to build these images in your brain and really recall the information so much faster. Like I was showing the hypoglycemia assessment. Let's see if I can go back there. Whee! Oh, there it is. So for me, when I had the question on, oh, my computer's thinking. Okay, so there was a question on hypoglycemia assessment, and I couldn't remember assessment findings. I couldn't remember the difference between hyperglycemia and hypoglycemia. And then I started to build this image in my brain, because I remember looking at the hypoglycemia assessment Picmonic. And I remembered there was a hippo holding a trimmer. So that stands for tremors, right? So I remember it was a select all that apply question, so I clicked off tremors. get them all mixed up. And then there was an option for confusion. And I remembered Confucius was in that Picmonic, so I clicked off that. You start to really associate things, and it's amazing when it starts working for you how you can really start seeing it work. And so we cover so many subjects. We cover OB, we cover peds, we cover psych, we cover meds, we cover med-surg, like Pharm is great. So it's really it's amazing. I love it so much. It's such a different way of learning, and it's I used it to help me pass the NCLEX, and it really worked. And it takes all the boring parts of studying out of studying. You have fun. You can sit down and really just absorb the information in a fun way, and you get to hear these amazing stories, and they're so weird and fun that you don't feel like you're studying, and then you're retaining all this information for a long, long time instead of feeling like you're cramming all the time. So I hope that answered your question. Okay, what else do we have? Will I be providing more webinars? I will be. We haven't talked about topics yet. Julia, thank you for asking. If you have anything that you want to see covered, feel free to let us know any things that you have suggestions for, because we're always open. So let me know what you feel like you need help with and you want some help on, and we'll try to think of stuff to come up with webinars and have you guys watch. Okay, more questions. How long does it take for a habit to form? Asked Jim. So, because I've done a lot of research on how to make habits. I don't know why my computer's thinking so hard. I hope you guys are not bored of this slide. But I've done a lot of research on making good habits because I've wanted to learn and change some habits and build good ones. So from the research that I had, it takes, and this is very general and very, not individualized and very generic, but it takes about 21 days, they say. But the point here is not the amount of time. The point is to start in small amounts, start really small, like I was talking about, and build up from there. Don't go into it. And this is hard for me too, because I am a very all or nothing person. I'm like, oh, I failed if I didn't like go full speed ahead. Like, no, don't think of it like that. Think small and then build up. And those are the habits that you will find are the ones that stick, is when you start small and you work at it slowly and slowly, and then it becomes a habit. Other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions, and we're out of time. We're 5 minutes over. So if you do have any other questions, please feel free to email us at feedback@picmonic.com, and we'll be happy to answer that for you. Okay, thanks so much.